Well, hello and welcome to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. My name is David Baer, and today we're going to be talking about your experience with advertising. I want to share a story that you may or may not be familiar with. Depends perhaps on how old you are or where you're tuning in from. But there used to be a very high circulation publication here in the US known as Reader's Digest. It actually was published in Mount Kisco, New York, where in the area where I grew up, Westchester County, and I used to pass by the Reader's Digest headquarters all the time as a kid. Back in the 1950s, which predates me, by the way, just want to point that out, there was a fabulous campaign, a really classic campaign that Reader's Digest ran in direct mail ads. So they would send out letters, and this is what they did to get people's attention. They had a special offer to subscribe for, I don't remember how many issues, 6 issues, 12 issues, whatever it was, for $1.99. And in the envelope, they had a clear window that you could see. There were 2 pennies. 1 penny, said the ad in the envelope, was for you, the prospective customer, to keep if you use the other penny to put a down payment toward that $1.99. So I don't remember if it was actually $2 and so this was your discount or how that worked exactly. I have to find that someday. But what they saw was that their subscription levels, their readership, went from 4.5 million subscribers to, get this, over 12 million subscribers as a result of that campaign. So what did they attribute this to? Well, they attributed it to the interactivity, the engagement, the physical activity of taking those pennies off of that glue and then applying them to whatever the return postcard mechanism was. Can you imagine if it was possible to do something like that in this day and age online in the environment that most of us are experiencing advertising? Well, guess what? It is. And today's guest, CJ Oltman from the amazing company Bannerwave, is going to explain exactly how. CJ, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So yeah, I'm CJ Oltman. I am the co-founder and CEO of Bannerwave. And essentially what we do is we help enable brands to supercharge their marketing and advertising through authentic interaction and personalization.
So we were talking about the interactivity part just a moment ago, and we'll get to the personalization. But if you could sort of walk us through what you mean exactly when you say interactivity, that would be really helpful, because I think a lot of consumers, are sort of browsing through the internet, blind to all the advertising that goes on around them. And there's just I think we're at the beginning of seeing the type of stuff that you tend to work on. So I bet a lot of folks haven't even experienced what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, we're a little ahead of the technology right now. What we're doing essentially is we're mainly the space that we can work in right now is the display advertising or programmatic display to bring interactivity to that first step of the funnel rather than relying on, the next step or the landing page to provide that meaningful brand interaction. So essentially, what we do for that is we're trying to break that customer fatigue that's going on right now due to the lack of innovation in the market. So, obviously when you're on, the web or a social media app, things like that, you see that the majority of the ads today are passive and not personalized. So it causes this sense of digital white noise. Traffickers can segment these types of ads based on user interests, purchasing intent, income, things like that. But there isn't personalization in terms of within the ad itself. And so, outside of that, without it being interactive, and being passive, it does force the user through the messaging of the ad, and a lot of the times isn't relevant. So, many users are missing, the majority of the communication or messaging and maybe just catching the end frame or a piece of it. And so by creating something that's interactive and that's driven by the user, they get to decide how they consume the content, what speed and what way, which makes it more relevant, interesting, and valuable to them.
So I'm going to ask you to use some lay terminology here because I followed a little bit of what you said, but if you were to sort of explain the type of ads and experiences that people are having online in practical terms, what are they seeing? You said something about catching the end frame. I don't know what that means. So, but I imagine that it means that it's an incomplete message that they're seeing. Can you
Right.
sort of
They're
talk?
not seeing that full message. So, like, for example, when you have an ad, or think about the video or something like that. So it plays through the video, then it ends on that final frame of
Mhm.
whatever that video or experience is. So that's kind of what we're talking about is a lot of the time when the users are kind of scrolling through the web or their social media, these videos or ads will start playing whether they're, actually looking at them or not. It's just if they're on screen or within view somewhere, they're going to play. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about there is, brands, they put so much time and effort into creating these really beautiful messages. So, to see a lot of those go to waste or to not have that true user engagement that it deserves, that's what we're trying to change. So bringing that interactivity. So for example, it would say something like, we know the share a Coke cans where you could customize a can or a bottle with someone's name on it.
Mhm.
We can create this banner and we have that allows you to type in a name and customize the banner right within the banner ad itself. So for someone who's online, if you're going to scroll past something that just says, hey, customize your Coke can, may not be as interested, but rather if you have a field there and you can actually type your name or a friend's name in and be like, what an easy and great way to be able to get people excited about it by seeing that visual payoff, and then shortening the sales process by obviously entering all that information in the website when you get there and making the purchase process streamlined.
Okay, I want to break this apart because this last piece is really interesting, but I want to wait till we move forward on the personalization to sort of explore that a little bit more. The evolution of online ads, as I understand it, is you had a static image to begin with, right? Then we had technology that allowed the images to be to move around in some way, whether it's video or GIF or GIF or some other format that we lay people are not familiar with. And what you're talking about is a next step beyond that is what I understand. So the interactivity, instead of just passively seeing something moving around, is actually to engage with it.
Right. Right. Going from as like you're saying, if we're going back, to simple text ads that they were brought into, static images, like you're saying, animated ads. And they do have a couple different variations. They have obviously videos. They do have HTML5 animation, which does the banner ads online that allow you to create those experiences. And then there's GIFs and things like that, which are just, they're just tiny little images that happen to animate. So um, we're really focused on the HTML5 route because that is what allows us to create these interactions, much like you'd see on a website.
Mhm.
So, or an app experience.
So it's almost like a little mini website that's embedded in different sites that people might be browsing. Where can people encounter these now? Because I understand we're sort of early in the technology. Is this something that can be found across all types of ad networks? Is it sort of limited in its distribution? How does that work?
The distribution is really limited right now. It's focused on display and programmatic display. So we have to focus in that channel to provide that type of interaction within the first step of the funnel.
Mhm.
Social media platforms, they don't provide that. They provide images and videos to allow advertisers to get their content out. We are looking and working with some platforms and some of the social advertisers to see how we can bring interactive advertising to those platforms and really provide a more authentic experience for the user and kind of start bringing humanity back into advertising.
Okay. I want to dive into the personalization piece now because what
Sure.
what you were describing with the Coke can, for example, was somebody could type in their name, and that ad is then beginning to capture their identity and maybe even capture, or the process of capturing the ability to then communicate with them on an ongoing basis. What maybe using a current campaign that you've have up and running with a client, or sort of your ideal image of a campaign. How would the funnel breakdown in terms of what the consumer is seeing, and on the flip side, what the business is actually doing, right? Remember, we were talking in the intro about the psychology behind those pennies. I imagine that there's a lot of that psychology happening here as well, in addition to, you know, assets being collected by the business.
Yeah, so with the Coca-Cola ad, they were not actually really collecting anything. They would just put like their first name in, or if it's some funny word, and that for that it's just something to put on the can. You actually see the can customize and put the name right within the ad. So that is a little bit less on capturing data, but where that kind of comes into play is when you're working with traffickers who have, there's a lot of data that comes from our cellular providers, from our, credit card companies. And obviously by utilizing these, we are providing them a certain level of access for our data. So that helps people understand our interests, our purchasing patterns, things like that. So when someone initially, you kind of have that top of the funnel. So when someone initially sees an ad, you may not know anything about them at that point outside of, maybe some level of interest. So what we want to do with our ads is collect more information. So say, you're planning a trip to Disney World, and you have just purchased your ticket. So now that you've purchased your ticket, it may trigger Disney to start sending you, things that you can actually experience while you're there. So those can be booking experiences like your rides, shows, dining with characters, to customizing or personalizing some of the things that you need for your experience. So the Magic Band, what you use to get on rides and pay for things, you could customize those. There's Mickey ears that you can customize and different things like that. So I think, when it comes into kind of the situational side of things, when you make a purchase somewhere, it could trigger some of these other things to come in that are specifically focused on your situation at that moment and what you may be interested in next.
I think this is pretty classic in terms of how a business might operate in general. Is, finding alignment in terms of upsells or cross sells, or providing additional value to their customers. And that Disney example is a great one, because Disney has mastered this. I think the last time you and I spoke, I happened to mention to you that Disney has a goal, and is very successful at quadrupling the spend of their average consumer, right? So if somebody budgets $1,000 for a Disney experience, they end up spending, happily, by the way, $4,000. And I imagine that they're using something like this personalized follow-up experience that you've just described to be able to manage that, to guide their customer into investing further into the experience.
Right. And I think that's the word that you're saying there, by guiding the customer. I feel like that is kind of the big thing, because through these interactive experiences, that's kind of what you're doing. You're kind of like grabbing their hand and you're guiding them through the experience so that they feel comfortable. And even looking at websites today, you look at websites and it puts you there and it's like, go find the information. I think over time, we're going to start seeing that change, where when you get to a website or you get somewhere, it's going to ask you like, what are you looking for? It's going to actually utilize AI and personalization to give you the experience and the information that you need.
I'm thinking about those choose your own adventure books. Do you have those when you were a kid? Um,
Absolutely.
where you would read something and you'd have to make a decision, and then it would say, okay, if you want to do this, you jump to this page. If you want to do that, jump to this page and continue reading. And I I think too few websites and too few um online selling processes really give the consumers the ability to make those choices. And so what you're describing in terms of, you know, a a site, an ad, the funnel in general, right? We marketers understand this, but most businesses don't have that structure in place. When
Right.
when when you're uh, um when you're starting the process of working on one of these projects, what do you tend to encounter in terms of what a business uh has in place to begin with, and then sort of how do you extract from that the right information to be able to then put one of these types of campaigns together?
Sure. So yeah, initially we'll do kind of an initial audit and strategy. So we'll kind of audit the marketing initiatives that they've been working on, how they speak about themselves, what type of things have their competitors been doing. And even when it comes to personalization and by doing interactive, you can actually collect some high level information to help you, gain deeper insights to utilize across your other marketing efforts. So
Mhm.
um, by doing that, we'll be able to see, maybe they're a company that needs to train their team. Does their team need to work on expanding their network? Gaining more knowledge, being certified in certain areas. So you can create an ad experience that has these different type of pillars and allow the user to go in and choose which one is relevant to them or what they like. So that way you're able to see, and we've had like a course, or a service come out, a tutoring or teaching service that has different ways to learn. You can learn online, you can do it live in a classroom, or you can do it, well, I guess it's live online, live in the classroom, or at your own pace.
Mhm.
So that's going to help you understand what ways your customers like to learn. And maybe you see that 50%, 60% actually like to do it on demand online. And that's what's going to help you kind of get these insights that allow you to enhance the business even more.
It that's actually quite interesting because there's this interactivity is helping inform future innovation in what they're going to do, just like any other marketing activity ought to. Is like you got to track what's going on, see what's working, and dial that up, and see what's not working and turn that off.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think another thing too is, you learn a lot from what your competitors are doing too. I mean, we talked about Disney, but who says that, well, Universal Studios can't say, oh, I know this person purchased a ticket for Disney or purchased, a flight for Orlando, whatever that may be. You can use it competitively to take advantage of, like, hey, I know my competitor has done this, or I know that, or even if it's something that's not a competitor, but a partner, there are ways to take advantage of other actions, that in terms of the people that are doing in your industry.
So much of advertising these days, particularly the large Madison Avenue ad agencies, um, from the world that I'm in, have this reputation of not really focusing on the outcome, but focusing on the awards that they're going to win for coming up with really cool ideas. And from the outside perspective, you look at what your ads do, the structure of them, and you go, oh, that's really gimmicky, but there's actually a lot more direct response embedded into what you're doing. There's a psychological implication of where the person is and where they're headed in the next step of the process than a lot of the sort of typical branding activity out there. I wonder if you can sort of walk us through some of the types of experiences that you've worked on with some of these campaigns.
Yeah, so personalization and interactivity can lend itself into many different ways. So we've done ones where it's a simple ad for getting a percentage off your next purchase, and maybe it's for PetSmart, and we have a dog bone that's going around the screen, and we have a dog's face, and their eyes are following the bone around, and as you move your mouse or your finger over it, it'll follow you. Now, again, very gimmicky, but we know what our pets look like when you break and open the treat bag. So bringing that smile to people's faces and then getting that click through, there are things like that really are effective. They may be simple and gimmicky, but are effective.
Mhm.
Now, if you're looking at something like the Coca-Cola can, when you're providing some type of customization, or say for FedEx, you're trying to get some new recruits. They have very static ads, and we kind of have an idea idea labs at Banner Wave that we will choose a brand and just kind of create a cool concept for them as just testing our creativity and looking at different tech. So we created one for FedEx that actually it's an illustration, but the back of the truck opens up and the parcels come down as Tetris pieces. And so it tells you the percentage of the truck you can fill up. It's like great companies start with strong employees, and what do you have? Do you have what it takes to pack the truck? So it gives that level of engagement and interaction that's fun, but also gets the brand messaging and the goal across as well. And even with that, we could tap into APIs. We've done APIs that hooked up to the weather. So if it's raining outside, we're going to be serving up products that are focused on rain or umbrellas. If it's snowing outside, we're going to be showing shovels and ice melt and things like that. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do.
That last piece is really interesting because I think it to a certain extent, somebody's going to go, that's so cool how they do that, but it gets their attention, right? So
Right.
that's the first piece. This is a corollary to this is an email marketer who is leveraging something that happened in the news as their subject line to get somebody, so it's hyper relevant to them. So I think again, we're talking about some fairly standard direct response mechanisms to get people engaged with the messaging.
Yep.
So as you've been talking, I've been hanging out on your website, flipping through some of the examples of the types of ads that you've created for clients, and I highly recommend our listeners head over there. So I'll make sure that we have a link to this. But you have some that are super interactive, like what we've been describing, where something happens when the mouse or your finger is over the ad, or you type the name in on the Coca-Cola one. And then there are some that have a lot less interactivity but still are moving. How do you determine sort of where you're going with what campaign? Is it a budget that guides you? Is it a conservative nature of a client who says, gosh, I don't really want to do that, but I'm willing to settle for this? How does that sort of come the decision get made there?
Sure. Yeah. So there is a little bit of shock initially too when doing interactive, because some people are, some brands just they like what they're doing. They feel it's, a big risk. And obviously there's budget that goes into that as well. The more interactivity, say much as like a website. If you have a website that's just kind of like brochure site, it's just informational, maybe it has a contact form. But if you have a site that you have a user login, you have your dashboard, your profile management, all these different types of features and functionality, the cost and the labor to get that done is going to be different. And it's much the same when we create these experiences, whether they're within, display ads or they're within, a website page. So that's kind of what we do with them, is we focus on, what their budget is, what can we create within that budget, and then also what are their goals and KPIs for the campaign, and do we truly feel that we can hit that for them based on their budget? Sometimes it might not be a good fit, but we look at where they are. We see, what they're doing in the market, what their budget is, their comfort level, and then we come up with a solution that is creatively positioned to their needs.
Yeah, and as I'm looking through this, there's fun and playful, there's elegant and educational, and I mean there's all kinds of different angles that you have on these. I'm looking at a rum ad right now, for example, and it's very elegant on the first piece of the ad. When I moved my mouse over it, I felt like I don't know what you call it, plinko, or
Yeah.
one of those types of games. And then where it ends is with a recipe. And I thought, oh, that's awesome. And then what's the call to action? Well, I can either play again or I can go and get more recipes, which I assume then further engages me if I then jump over to their website.
Right. And that was for Cruise and Rum. So that one, they just wanted to have a brand awareness campaign. They were running static and animated ads that just said, hey, find Cruise and Rum near you. And they were trying to get people to buy, Cruise and Rum close to them. The issue with that is you're not really, this was being run right before summer. It didn't really have the feel that, it needed to grab attention. And so What we did is we created that Plinko experience that kind of nods ahead to summer vibes, being
Mm-hmm.
outside, drinking cocktails with your friends. And we also show, just we're not telling them go get cruise and rum, but we're showing like, what can you do with it? Well, you can make these delicious and wonderfully summer cocktails. And so by doing that, you're able to show them how they can utilize the product, what different recipes they can have, and then they'll still go out to the store and purchase the rum. So it's providing experience that enables you to give a meaningful interaction, with the brand and their products or services.
Yeah. This is so much better, I should say, than an ad that I recently have seen all over the place, which is also a little gimmicky. Not yours, by the way, but it's an ad for another alcoholic beverage that is something about like an app that uh, you open at a certain time of day to say work is over and it's time to enjoy this beverage now. And as I looked at the ad, I was like, I'm trying to decipher what they're trying to tell me, what they want me to do, and it was totally unclear, right? I knew what the brand was because they were super focused on making sure that I got the brand. So maybe it was simply a branding ad, but it didn't, I wasn't engaged enough to go, all right, I'm going to invest the time in trying to figure this out and then make the take the necessary next step. Now, as a marketer, I was curious, what are they trying to get me to do? And so I dug deeper and I finally found the thing that they wanted me to go to a website and download something. And I, by the way, was incredibly disappointed by it. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about or not, but I'm gonna to save the embarrassment of this company, not not go down that path.
Sure.
These ads are completely different because it's super clear what I'm doing, what you're guiding me through, etc. And it's fun and engaging, and ultimately I get a sense of the environment that you are trying to invite me into, as you were describing, the playfulness of the summer fun in the cruising rum ad.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's it's important to be able to provide that level of, we call that kind of like the billboard approach. So, think about when you're driving down the street, you see the billboards on the side, you only have a couple of seconds to grab that attention. So, being in the display ad space, and kind of focusing a little bit on interactive advertising there, while we can make things very complicated, very technical, we found that keeping things, focused and streamlined, focusing on the kind of principles of the billboard approach, those are what's really going to get a user kind of locked in and wanting to engage. As soon as you have to start, like you were saying, you want to figure it out. As soon as someone says, I have to figure it out, you're in bad shape. So it should be intuitive, it should be clear what you're trying to promote, obviously who the brand is, and then, what's going to happen when they actually click through that CTA or that call to action.
Yeah. The stuff that I'm seeing on your site is a lot of big brands. And I imagine that it's not the local mom and pop shop that's going to be wanting to come over to your website and engage you, but who are the types of clients that you tend to support? Do you work through, marketing agencies as partners, or do you work directly with, marketing departments of enterprise companies? And what's sort of the entry level for
Sure.
your services?
Sure, absolutely. So with us, we're pretty versatile in terms of who we work with. We work with, new startups to, Fortune 500 companies. So I think it really just depends on, the budget and the needs. And, we like to be flexible in that sense because, some of the startups and some of these new companies, their missions are truly good missions for the world and stuff. And if we could take some of those ideas and things that we've learned and experienced with some of these Fortune 500 companies and apply that to help these startups and, these wonderful organizations to grow, then, that's something that we want to do. So we do partner directly with brands. We partner with, agencies and, marketing advertising agencies as well. We basically say, Banner Wave is, something you just kind of plug into your already working marketing system, whether you have an in-house team or already have an agency of record. We basically supercharge what you're already doing. So we're like, think of nitrous for your marketing. So we don't, we're not trying to step on toes or take work away from people, but we're experts in this space, and we know how to really execute and get some good value out of this. So that's kind of our approach to collaboration and partnerships.
That's awesome, and it's a great way, I think, to sort of be a member of a team as opposed to sort of coming in
Right.
and replacing anybody. If folks do want to find out more about you, and well, as I said, make sure to have the link to the work page on your website. Where can they find you?
So you guys can find us at bannerwave.com. That's BANNERWAVE.com. You could also email me directly at cj@bannerwave.com. If you want to talk about anything we covered in this podcast, just put the name of the podcast in there. And also happy, if people are looking to do kind of say like an audit on their current ads and things like that. We do provide an audit and consultation on, upcoming or current ad campaigns. And, we're happy to throw off, the 25% off the initial audit if they mention the name of the podcast.
Awesome. Well, that's greatly appreciated, and so we'll make sure to remind our folks of that in the show notes as well. CJ Oltman, this has
Of
been
course.
great. I really appreciate the time and the introduction to a very different and hopefully something that's been gaining traction in the online advertising space. Thanks so much for
Absolutely.
joining me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Indeed. Folks, this has been another episode of More Perfect Marketing. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you know somebody who could benefit from listening to this episode, please share it. And if you have some feedback to share, and especially if it's positive, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Until next time, this is More Perfect Marketing. Take care.